Thank you for joining me for this episode of Mike Hikes. This week we're going to look at a quick backpacking trip I took for just one night into the Lost Nation State Game Area. Long before this land had a name on any government map, it had a people. The Potawatomie had lived across southern Michigan and the Great Lakes region for generations, and in the rolling forested hills of what is now Hillsdale County, a band of somewhere near 100 to 150 people moved with the seasons under the leadership of a chief named Baw Beese. Baw Beese, born around 1790, was what his people called a council chief, a peace chief, and by all surviving accounts, he was a man who took that title seriously. His band fished the large lake that now bears his name. They cultivated maize near the corner of Squaw Field and Waldron Roads. They hunted the wooded terrain south of Somerset. And they ranged the steep, glacially carved hills of the land we're walking today, the very same ridges and ravines the North Country Trail winds through now. Though archaeological evidence exists to suggest a people group has lived in this area long before the Potawatomie, Chief Baw Beese is where our story begins. When settlers began arriving in Hillsdale County in the late 1820s and 1830s, Chief Baw Beese did not meet them with hostility. He met them with a kind of pragmatic dignity. He had been told, through treaties he may not have fully participated in, that his band was to receive $400 a year in exchange for lands ceded on the Huron and Raisin rivers. So as far as Baw Beese was concerned, the settlers who came after that were tenants on land he still considered his, and he treated them accordingly. He collected what he believed was his due, and in the long winters, his people helped those settlers survive, providing meat, sharing medicinal knowledge, and teaching them the land. The early Hillsdale County settlers, to their credit, seem to have genuinely valued that relationship, and by 1838, most of the Potawatomie in southern Michigan had already been forced westward, sadly, to reservations in Iowa and Kansas. But Baw Beese and his band, they remained. The people of Hillsdale County weren't pushing for their removal, they coexisted. The youngest son of Baw Beese even attended school in Jonesville, which was the first organized school district in the state of Michigan. But sadly, that peace ended in the autumn of 1840. Someone, one of the settlers who had bought land in the area, wrote a letter to President William Henry Harrison asking that the Potawatomie be removed. Federal troops arrived, and when the day came for Baw Beese and his people to leave, the schools were let out. People lined the roads, and Baw Beese climbed into a horse-drawn buggy and led the column himself through Jonesville, through Litchfield, to Marshall, and then west along the Mississippi, up the Missouri River, and eventually to a reservation at Council Bluffs, Iowa. There is some historical evidence that a handful of Baw Beese's people never made that march, that they slipped into the forests, perhaps into these very hills, and were hidden by settlers who couldn't bear to see them go. Others, it's said, eventually returned and quietly assimilated. Whether that's strictly true, no one can say with certainty, but there's something about the name, Lost Nation, that seems to hold that question open. A people who were here, and then tragically, were gone, but left behind something in the land that refuses to be entirely forgotten. That name didn't become official until 1966 when the Michigan Conservation Commission changed the area's designation from the rather plain Pittsford State Game Area to Lost Nation in honor of that local history. The area had first been established in 1951, assembled from 14 parcels of land in Hillsdale County, purchased largely through hunting and fishing licenses and federal wildlife restoration funds. Today, it covers about 2,471 acres of steep hardwood forest, wetland, and the headwaters of the St. Joseph of the Maumee River. And since 1997, the North Country Trail has been certified through it, roughly 6.5 miles of foot traffic only trail that many hikers consider among the finest stretches of the NCT in all of southern Michigan, this hiker included. The NCT spans nearly 4,800 miles from North Dakota all the way to Vermont. It passes through 8 states, and in Michigan alone it covers about 1,176 miles across both of our peninsulas. And this short stretch here in Hillsdale County, in a game area most people have never heard of, is consistently ranked among the best of it in the lower half of the state. I made my camp, as you can see, right here on the bluff overlooking Lake Number 8. And that got me thinking, why did they name it Lake Number 8? I mean, sequentially, it kind of makes sense, but why the lack of creativity? I found out that when the Michigan DNR assembled the Lost Nation State Game Area starting in 1951, the primary purpose was for wildlife management. Specifically, they wanted to create waterfowl habitat. Engineers went in and built earthen dams on low-lying areas and stream drainages to impound the water and create a series of artificial ponds and shallow lakes. Because they were management units built sequentially by the state, not natural lakes that had accumulated local folk names over generations, they were simply numbered in order, Lake 1, Lake 2, and so on, like Lake 8. It was bureaucratic bookkeeping more than anything poetic. There's a cave within this same trail system and in this land that bears another name, a name that's far less noble. But I'm approaching that tiny little trail that goes to Doty Cave. So it's right off of the North Country Trail. Here we go. Let me turn the camera around. So as you approach from that direction, if you're coming from Lake 8, which I believe is the northwest area, down the North Country Trail, you'll be coming down here. Here's maybe a landmark for you. There's just a whole series of blazes. But a little trail over here that heads down to Doty Cave. Silas Doty. He was born in Vermont in 1800, the descendant of all things, a Mayflower passenger. He began stealing as a child, horseshoes and pocket knives, not because he needed them, but for the pleasure of getting away with it. By his 20s, he was leading a gang of counterfeiters and horse thieves operating across New England and the mid-Atlantic states. And by his 40s, he had followed the frontier west to Michigan and Indiana, and had somehow also managed to involve himself in the Mexican-American War, where he allegedly stole a horse from General Zachary Taylor's camp and presented it to General Winfield Scott as a gift. Whether that's strictly true is hard to say. Doty was not a man inclined toward understatement. What is documented is this. In 1851, Hillsdale County caught him. Prison records at the State Prison of Southern Michigan confirm that Silas Doty was sentenced that year from Hillsdale County to serve 17 years for larceny and burglary. He served 15 of them, released in 1866 for, of all things, good behavior. Within months, he stole another horse, from a lawyer this time, only one that he felt had wronged him, and he went back to prison. But here's what connects Doty directly to the ground we're standing on. In his own autobiography, a boastful, unapologetic document that his family was so mortified by that they reportedly bought up and destroyed as many copies as they could find, Doty writes that after his 1866 release, he hid a stolen horse in the southern part of Hillsdale County for 3 days, with no one suspecting a thing. That location matches precisely the rugged terrain near Pittsford and Jefferson Township line, right here where I'm standing in this game area, in these ravines. This very cave here in the Lost Nation has 2 chambers and 3 entrances. It's sandstone floored, and it's low enough in the back that a tall man, if I was brave enough to go back I would demonstrate, has to bend. This cave bears his name, and according to a Michigan DNR Natural Features Inventory, a larger cave once existed nearby, but local residents deliberately destroyed it to prevent Doty from using it as a hiding place. They could not keep him locked up, so they tried to take away his shelter. He died in 1876 at his son's home in Reading, Michigan, still in Hillsdale County. The local paper's obituary described him as someone who would steal simply for the joy of it. Alright, this is pretty level, like camera. That's the incline going down to Doty Cave, which is down there. But worth the side trip for sure. Alright, I just checked the forecast, and we're supposed to get rain in 40 minutes, so I think I have a mile and a half to get back to camp. Should be plenty of time. Hopefully I can make it in 30 or less if I hoof it and don't record. All right. The rain came an hour sooner. Wind's picking up a bit, but I can see my lake and the river. I'll turn this around. There's the river down there. And, oh boy, that right there is the lake, so a couple minutes I'll be back at camp, and the rain is pretty much stopped, but that makes for some fun. All right, back to camp. The rain stopped for now, and the wind seemed to die down. I don't know if it's because I'm kind of down from some of those hills or what, but not too bad. And there's camp.
Well, good morning. It's a little after 7, and that was a pretty good night. My sleeping bag did very well. I was warm the whole night, so that's good. It's a 20-degree bag, comfortable till 30, and it got down to, well, right now it's 30, feels like 18. I'm going to get packed up here and dressed warm. Just a short hike out back to the car, and then I do want to try to go down to the other stretch of the NCT where they're putting in a new bridge, and it looked like, last I saw, it looked like it was pretty close to being done, so it'd be kind of cool to see it in person. That's the plan. Get up, get dressed, get packed up, and moving.
That's how cold it got last night. Got nice little ice chunks. The Chief Baw Beese Chapter of the NCTA just completed this beautiful footbridge. The two logs that you once had to perilously cross still exist underneath it for now, as a reminder of the dangers that once stood where we now can cross in relative ease. From Hudson Road in the northwest to Pittsford Road in the southeast, the North Country Trail doesn't just pass through Lost Nation quietly. It moves through open oak woodland, drops into cedar lowlands, and crosses the kind of terrain that reminds you why this part of southern Michigan still feels wild. The trail here is unhurried. There are no dramatic ridgelines, no canyon views, just the steady rhythm of glacial till country where the land rolls gently and the forest does the talking. You're reminded why the Potawatomie loved this land and why horse thieves found it a great place to hide away. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Mike Hikes as I toured through the Lost Nation State Game Area. I hope if nothing else, this video makes you want to get out and explore that area for yourself. If you do so, take note of the history of the area, honor it as you walk through it, and remember the feet that have trod this path before you. And as always, I hope to see you down the trail.